Welcome to This Week in Missouri Politics. A little different this week. We are at the Farm Bureau Legislative Briefing in Jefferson City. We're at the Capitol Plaza. We have plenty of Farm Bureau members here in attendance, and we're joined by the president of the Missouri Farm Bureau, Blake Hurst. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Seems like when I interview, we're always doing cool things. We're at the State Fair. We're here in Jeff City. It seems like it's not the normal stage set scene.
Yeah, we enjoy this event every year. I always have a good crowd. Put on a big banquet last night with some pretty good pork.
I like that. Let's talk about a piece of legislation that you've been very active on. There's something called this Grain Belt Express. It's a big electric line going across the northern part of the state. Missouri has a few things. We're centrally located. We have wind. People from Atchison County, where you're from, know all about wind up there. But they're going to run this across the state. They're going to use some eminent domain stuff. And Farm Bureau has been very active in opposing that. Kind of give folks that maybe, I know everybody at Farm Bureau knows about it, but tell the rest of the state what your opposition is.
Well, when the project started, it was to take power from Kansas, wind farms out there, to the eastern United States. That meant that Missouri got absolutely no benefit from it. It's going to go 200 miles across the state of Missouri, affect well over 550 landowners, have their land crossed and their land taken away from them. They since have made arrangements to drop a little bit of electricity in our state, but basically this is what they call a merchant line, which means that the rates they charge for moving that electricity are set by the market. It's a venture capital group started it. Now a big energy company has bought it, and they're running a profit-making venture, which we're all in favor of, but they ought not to get to take our land in order to do it.
Also, I mean, I've heard a lot of your members also say this is not just about this project. There's people that support this project. It's also about the next project, and where do you stop using eminent domain to take people's land?
Well, sure, because if you use the reasoning that's used in this project as, well, we ought to do this because it'll generate tax dollars, it'll generate economic activity. Well, that goes for any private business. So whether it be a shopping mall or a development, a real estate development, or whatever you can think of that might make money and might increase the tax rolls in a county, I guess can get eminent domain, and that's a bad, bad precedent.
So it's always interesting. People wonder, well, why are you a member of Farm Bureau? Why are you a member of any interest group? I watched, even if this bill doesn't pass and this project moves ahead, I noticed that they made an announcement about the time the House passed the bill that you're advocating that would stop the program to drop rural broadband on this line. I think it's interesting whether anything happens as far as legislation, if the project still moves ahead. I think there's directly because of work that you guys and other folks have done that rural broadband's added to that, and that wasn't a part of this until a few weeks ago.
Well, we ought not forget the part about dropping the supposedly several $1 million in electricity discounts wasn't part of the project until we started talking about eminent domain. The rural broadband, which won't bring broadband to the home. People need to understand that the expensive part of broadband is to go from that trunk line to your house, and they're not offering to do any help for that. But all these things are sweeteners because opposition of groups like the people in this room. So that's why it's so important that we do what we do.
Let's talk about rural broadband. I've growing up in western Butler County, it seems like every piece of innovation and new technology has almost taken people out of rural Missouri to the suburbs or to the cities. To me, rural broadband is the most important thing. It could actually let people live a rural way of life and make a good living, and do it because you have from your home in Poplar Bluff, Sedalia, Tarkio. But you have to have that internet. The internet is the thing that makes all those things possible. And frankly, like Netflix out of the farm in Poplar Bluff, it's not real. Like, you can't actually watch Netflix because it's just not fast enough. The rural broadband, I think, is such an important thing.
Well, it is, and you're just exactly right. Whether it be telehealth, where we get health care. I had a chance to visit with a surgeon from Georgia. He actually, by looking at people, can tell what kind of stroke they're having and the difference in the recommended medical treatment for a bleeding stroke versus a clotting stroke, exactly opposite. He can do that over an interview, over a telephone, or over good broadband, over good rural broadband, and the local medical people will have the right advice. Hugely important. But it's important for our businesses as well. And someday just like you mentioned, we'd love to see telecommuting where people have the advantage of going to a small school, living in a small place, being close to family, and still able to communicate in real time with the people that are paying their salary. That would be a wonderful advantage for rural Missouri. Right now, over half the state couldn't possibly entertain that kind of occupation. So we've got to improve it.
They built the interstates that allowed the suburbs to grow. I think really when you bring broadband out, you allow people to live in rural Missouri again. I think you could have the same population effect. Because look, I think most folks would like to live in Fredericktown. They'd like to live in Wayne County, but it's very hard to do that and make a good living. Now with the internet, it's possible, but you have to stretch that internet out. I think it's really probably the most transformational thing that can happen to Missouri.
It is. It's just like electricity in the 30s and 40s. My parents lived on opposite sides of Jefferson County. There's 12 years of difference between when my mom got electricity and my dad got electricity. Just a difference in community effort, of community support. That's what we're building with Missouri Farm Bureau, is that community support for this new technology, or not new now, but technology that's just as important to real citizens as electricity was.
Let's talk about some biodiesel stuff that you've been working on. I think people they come up to the gas pump, they see some of it, but explain actually what that lever and what that pump actually, how does that get there, and what program has helped make that happen in Missouri?
Well, we have biodiesel available some places in Missouri. This bill would increase that availability. It would vary it over the year because biodiesel, it does make a difference whether it's warm or cold. What I mean to Missouri is processing plants to process all the soybeans. We're a huge, soybeans is our biggest crop, by far our largest cash crop in the state. As you know from the news, we're facing some challenge in the export of that crop. So if we will adopt this bill, if the Senate and the House will approve it, we'll increase demand for that Missouri-grown product, and we'll increase employment in those rural areas because we'll be processing that product as well.
Let's talk about politics. You've been outspoken. Clean Missouri was approved by the voters in 18. There's some legislation that would give the voters a second look at that before it redistricts. The ethics part, I think most people in Jeff City, no one cared, fine, whatever the changes were. I don't think there was not a big pushback on that. However, the redistricting has been something that a lot of people have talked about. You've been pretty vocal on your opposition. Walk me through this. If that is put back on the ballot, do groups like Farm Bureau help get that passed?
Well, we will. I mean, obviously it's going to take more dollars than Farm Bureau has available to get it passed, as it would any initiative petition.
You're on the inside of this. I don't think you'd be this outspoken without being pretty educated on it. The thing I've been a little pessimistic about is I see Republicans wanting to put this back on the ballot, but do they really have, is there really the commitment to run it? Because I believe Sean Nicholson and the folks that passed it the first time, they have a few $1 million to defend this, and getting a yes is very hard. Do you believe there's actually the finances there to win a campaign and overturn Clean Missouri?
I think it's going to be a huge challenge, and I think the people that put money in Republican politics have to ask themselves whether that money is going to be nearly as effective if the present redistricting regime stays in place, and the answer is no. Yeah. It's going to cost a lot more to accomplish the things that they hope to accomplish. This is an investment in their future, and until they come to that realization, you're exactly right, we've got a challenge.
Do you think, though, it's going to take drawing some, I mean, I think the part about Clean Missouri that stuck out to me was you want to change, you want to have a demographer draw out, all those are kind of process things, you can agree with them or disagree. But I do believe, like, if you're from Madison County, Missouri, you should want Fredericktown all in one district. You should want Madison County District. You should want your sewer districts, your electric co-ops. You should want things to be in together, because it's like a quarterback. If you have two quarterbacks, it means you don't have one. If your community is split, oftentimes you don't have a state rep from there. You don't have a state senator from there. It matters to have, well, look how well Action County's done because of Sam Graves. It matters to have the best chance to have folks from your county representing you.
Well, it does, and we've gone from a commonality of interests and geography to competitive balance. Well, competitive balance changes over the years. My interest and my neighbor's interests are going to stay the same. We live in a real place, we're interested in agriculture, all those things stay the same, they'll always be that way. But the political party, that the allegiance that my neighbors might have, changes. And it's done that in my lifetime. You couldn't win as a Republican in Atchison County 20 years ago. Now it's much simpler to run on the Republican ballot.
Do you think that's something that modern Republicans forget? I remember working in the Capitol when the Democrats had the majority. Now, it wasn't long and it was over pretty quick, but I think sometimes Republicans forget that politics does change. And just because they have supermajorities today, that doesn't mean they always will. I think that fact gets a little bit lost in the Capitol sometimes.
Well,
just like the Democrats didn't think they could ever be out of the majority, and now look at the situation.
And that's exactly why they're out of the majority, because they never thought about what could happen if they didn't listen to people back home. Oh, absolutely can change, and that's why this competitiveness thing locks in districts that may not be the same in 10 years.
But, I mean, I have some empathy for people who are Democrats who look at Claire McCaskill got 45% of the vote or whatever she got, and the representation reflected in Jeff City is not that. But I always felt like more than some gerrymandered maps, it was that Democrats are very densely populated in St. Louis and Kansas City, right on state lines. So it makes it hard to draw districts that would be more competitive for them. And I understand, and I kind of have some empathy for them. but I don't know what you can practically do about it.
Well, they have to change. The urban areas have to think about rural people and think about things they're interested in. When they do that, then we'll have a competitive two-party system. Until they do, we have what we have. It's not my neighbor's fault that one party has forgotten them.
So looking forward, this moved through the Senate. The House had some changes they wanted to make. Does the House just take the Senate bill, or what's the path forward?
I don't know. I mean, obviously, we'd like to do the House as quickly as possible, and we're very optimistic that this thing's going to be on the ballot this fall.
Tell me, looking forward, I think Trump looks like he runs very well in Missouri again. The Democrats have Bernie Sanders, maybe Mike Bloomberg. I tell you, I know there's people that support Sanders fervently, and I respect that, but I think it's going to be awfully hard for Bernie Sanders to be even competitive in Missouri.
I think that would be correct.
It just, if you take a Joe Biden, right? I mean, you could take Joe Biden to the Washington County Fair, right? I was there. Joe Biden, maybe he doesn't win Washington County, but no Democrat's going to be afraid to be seen with him. I just think if you think of Bernie Sanders in Potosi, that doesn't help Nicole Gallery. No one's going to be wanting to be seen with that guy, right?
I think you're exactly right. I mean, I think the culture is so different. His positions are so different. They're going to be seen as frightening by our members. You talk about
that's bad for the state. I think supermajorities generally don't produce good public policy on whatever party has them. I think if Democrats take another hit, I don't think the quality of Missouri public policy will go up by losing more Democrats in the legislature. I think the supermajority growing, and if Bernie Sanders is the nominee, probably does, is probably not good for even people that want to see things they would promote.
I think politics is like anything else. Competition is a good thing.
Yeah.
And I think if Bernie Sanders lessens that competition, that's not good.
Well, we're going to come back with our Opinion Maker panel. Blake Hurst, the President of the Missouri Farm Bureau, thank you for joining us. We'll be right back with our Opinion Maker panel. Senator Justin Brown's going to join us, Representative Jim Hansen, and a couple Farm Bureau members. But first, go to showmissouri.com, the history of Missouri, one county at a time, Sheridan County. We had a great time talking about one of the richest histories of any county in the state. We'll be right back after this.
All across Missouri, our new car and truck dealers are building strong local economies. When you buy a car or truck in Missouri, you're helping to support over 20,000 Missouri families who rely on the auto industry for good-paying local jobs. You're also helping fund our communities, schools, first responders, and our roads because dealers generate millions of dollars in tax revenue. Missouri's automobile dealers have been the foundation of our communities for generations and for generations to come. The Missouri Automobile Dealers Association.
Mike Parson served in law enforcement for 22 years. A former sheriff, Parson is tough on crime. Governor Parson is standing up for victims, investing in better mental health services, and cracking down on violent crime and drugs. Governor Parson's anti-crime initiatives have led to the arrests of hundreds of violent criminals and gang members. A former sheriff, a conservative, tough on crime governor. Mike Parson is making Missouri families safer.
Your energy needs are changing. That's why at Ameren, Missouri, we're not waiting on the future. We're building it with the Smart Energy Plan, advancing thousands of projects across the state, helping reduce emissions through cleaner energy sources, boost reliability with self-healing equipment, and better withstand storms with new composite poles. Moving Missouri forward and bringing us all a little closer together. That's energy at work.
Welcome back to This Week in Missouri Politics. We are here at the Farm Bureau meeting in Jefferson City, the Capitol Plaza, joined by an opinion maker panel, one of the most respected legislators in the whole House, Representative Jim Hansen. Thank you for joining us this week. First time on the show.
Thank you.
Todd Hays from Marion County Farm Bureau. Thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you. Welcome to be here.
Vernon Hart from Buchanan County. Thank you very much for being here today.
Thank you for inviting me.
And Senator Justin Brown from Phelps County. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Scott. Always glad to be here.
Let's talk about something that's on the mind of everybody here, something that's been probably the first bill out of the House. It's a bill you've worked on. It's about something called the Grain Belt Express. It's a big wind energy line that's going to run across the northern part of the state. It's moving forward, but there's some legislation that would take eminent domain out of the use of the project, right?
Right. What it does basically, my bill and Representative Hansen bill, Representative Hansen, I have hats off to him. He carried this bill last year. He knows this issue inside and out. I'm proud to carry it on the Senate side. He's got it out on the House side already. I've got it out of committee on the Senate side, and we'll hopefully be going to it on the floor in the next 30 days or so. But what it does, it focuses on the eminent domain piece. There's about 32 municipalities that signed on with this company to become a customer. PSC had denied them a license twice before, but now that they are a customer, they have the ability to get a license in what they've done. And what they're doing is they're trying to take properties by eminent domain. So these municipalities are saying, they're going to get this energy cheap, and it's going to be this huge savings for the state of Missouri. And the way I look at it, and I won't speak for the representative, but the way I look at it is, it doesn't matter what kind of money it saves. Are we willing to sacrifice people's farms and homes?
Yeah.
For some company to
Might
come
sell
in.
some of that power to some co-ops, right? If they're going to be taking rural
Right.
folks' land.
That's right. And it's not a need. So.
Representative Hansen, that is some quality legislating. You got your bill out like lightning fast. You've worked on this for 3 or 4 years now. Tell folks how you started working on this piece of legislation.
Well, I first became interested in this subject. This project runs through 8 counties in the state of Missouri. 2 of those 8 counties are in my district. And I went to my first meeting about this issue in January 2014. I filed the first bill dealing with this project in 2015 in House Bill 1027. Then last year I had a House Bill 1062, and this year it's House Bill 2033. So I've been dealing with the issues in the PSC and their rulings for quite some time now. And as the senator said, they have some municipalities sign up. Their whole issue that they were trying to overcome was, are they a public utility? Mm-hmm. And I've said all along, they're not a public utility. They're a private company wanting to cross our state and use eminent domain. Well, they had to come up and get very creative on how they're going to get eminent domain through the PSC. Their first approach was, and as the senator said, they were denied twice this project. And then, there's things that always happen behind the scene that change how things happen in the state and in legislation. But they were denied twice, and then they came up with the idea, well, to be a benefit of Missouri, we're going to have 39 municipalities sign up to take some of the electricity off of this line. There's 955 municipalities in this state, so 39 doesn't really justify a big benefit to our state.
Do you think this is the session that this bill moves through and passes?
Well, I certainly hope so. And
you couldn't have got it any faster, right?
We had it on the floor of the Senate last year. It was on another bill. It got filibustered, but this year it's just great to have Senator Brown on the Senate side carrying a bill also. So that gives it.
Yeah.
I feel
Double
I have more allies.
Let's
with
talk
having
about,
him over there.
people wonder, you're a member of, like most Missourians, whether they know it or not, are a member of a Chamber of Commerce, a Foreign Bureau, ACLU, some organization. I've seen that just even if the legislation doesn't pass, even if they build this Grain Belt Express, which I think would it touch Marion County?
It would be just bordered Marion County and Rawls County, so it would be in Marion County.
Even if none of this legislation passes, I've seen through Representative Hansen's work, groups like the Farm Bureau, they're now going to run broadband across it. The power they're giving to the cities that are probably a pretty good discount. None of that happens except for people advocating, and the deal, regardless of anything happens legislatively, the deal from Missouri has gotten sweeter because people are members of groups like Farm Bureau.
It has, Scott. It's gotten, as we put up more roadblocks and have more people involved in fighting this issue in opposition to what they're doing, trying to take land without good compensation, restricting farmers and other landowners from being able to use their property as they see fit. They've added some things to it. Adding, say, hey, we're going to give you some electricity in the state of Missouri. Now they're saying we're going to maybe put a broadband line on these towers going across the state. They keep sweetening it up, like you said, Scott, and it's kind of dangling a carrot out there, and whether enough people fall for it, I don't know. But if through this whole process, we gain more for the people in Missouri and landowners, but first and foremost, we want to protect the landowners' rights. We feel like this is a violation of their rights by giving eminent domain to public status.
Mr. Hart, in Buchanan County, to me, you look at not just this project, but what about the next project? If you start saying that a private company can use eminent domain, where does that stop?
Well, you could be opening up a Pandora's box. It does go through the southern part of Buchanan County, and we've had a lot of opposition, even from our presiding commissioners and our county commissioners all along, been pretty much in disagreement of it because it just violates people's property rights. It's just not what they use that land for now that's going to really affect how the farmers farm. We use a lot of aerial application that takes it out of the equation. It's going to affect your GPS and your satellite systems on equipment. And I have seen that done personally on some high lines that we farm under.
Sir Brown, we started talking about high-tech stuff. Rural broadband is something that you and I have talked about many times on this show. 2 years ago, there was legislation passed that allowed the co-ops to go into this business. Places like Phelps County, you have internet in the city, but when you get outside of the city, it doesn't exist.
Right.
Some of these things everybody enjoys aren't real in rural Missouri. What is the status of that, and how important is that to your constituents?
Oh, it's very important. You know, the 5 counties I've got are all rural counties, and you know, Phelps County is home of Missouri Science, University of Missouri Science and Technology. So you would think that we wouldn't have a broadband problem there in Phelps County. But like you said, the minute you get out of the city limits, it's almost like you're, you know, going back in time 10 years when it comes to internet service. So it's a severe disadvantage to our children. You know, as we progress, you know, through this ever-changing world of technology, you know, the slower the internet service, the less chance they have, or more chance they have of being behind when they go to college. So I think a lot of our kids in rural Missouri are at a disadvantage going to school, you know, college after they get out of high school because of some of these internet issues. And I have a bill, Senate Bill 865, that I hope that I can get at least on the floor, that basically these companies that are applying for these grants, you know, to do the infrastructure for rural broadband, if they don't show results with the minimum requirements that FCC requires as far as you know, service and timely manner of getting it in, they have to pay the money back. So, you know,
I like that.
right. You know, I am all about expanding rural broadband in this state, and I'm not trying to hinder it, but you know, we've appropriated dollars the last 8 years to create, you know, create holes for people to apply for money to expand rural broadband in these counties, and we're not seeing good results. So I think we need it. It needs to be done, but there needs to also be
needs to
checks
work.
and balances on it.
Representative, I mean, you look at your constituents. I mean, if I think that most all rural Missouri has lost population over the last 10, 20 years. The one thing that changes that, I think, is if you can run rural broadband, you can work from home.
Yeah, rural broadband, you know, obviously it's an issue that needs to be solved. Where it really impacts rural Missouri, I have rural counties in Rawls and Monroe and Pike County. It has a big impact on education. A lot of the students in my district have internet service at their school, but they go home at night when they want to do research or some homework. They have no internet service, and and they can't even do courses online or anything like that from their home because of lack of rural broadband. And I'm fortunate. My Rawls County Electric Co-op has done a great job implementing
Really a success story in Rawls County.
They're a big success story, and I think that we just have to get the co-ops involved and get them the money, they'll get the job done.
I think that's, I mean, to me, in Ozark border, I think people have a very high opinion of it. I think if you do, I think folks in Southeast Missouri, if you give Ozark border the money, they will get the job done. What does that change the dynamic for groups like Farm Bureau? People leave the farm now, but you don't have to be a farmer to live in a farming community.
No, there's a growing demand of folks that are wanting to, maybe they've left the farm, left the rural communities, they grew up, went to college, had a job outside the state or somewhere, but they're wanting to come back, bring their young families back to the places they grew up, the schools they went to, because they love that rural atmosphere and that way of life. But with that, they need access to broadband, so they have a secured site to do work. Not only that, in agriculture, with a lot of the data-driven things we do now in our farming operations, we need good, reliable, fast broadband, and also for not only the schools, but also for medical and other things to be able to do our businesses and get people back in rural areas and keep them there.
A lot of people watching this on Channel 38 in Kansas City, good folks.
Yes.
But you could this way, if you had rural broadband available in places like Buchanan County, outside of the city of St. Joseph, what are you, an hour, half an hour from the airport?
Half hour.
You could work from home, be a half hour from the airport, fly anywhere in the world you need to fly, and you could actually do jobs that could make a very good living in Buchanan County. But the one thing you have to have is you have to have that internet.
There's a lot of people work out of their home if they have good internet service. In the rural area, it's very important that they can have that option.
Terry Faughn in West Butler County likes to watch her son's TV show, but she can't really watch it at home. She has to go, she works at the church, so she goes to the church and can watch it on Mondays because the internet's too slow to watch it at the house. It really is a break, and I think a lot of people in urban and suburban areas don't understand the change in your lifestyle when you don't have access to the internet.
The people who got it don't realize what they do have,
Right.
because until you don't have it, that's when you miss it. And a lot of people in the rural areas don't realize they're missing what they're missing out on until they go see it on somebody else's that do have good internet service, broadband service.
Representative, let's talk about a bill that the Farm Bureau's been active on. It's Clean Missouri passed. It's going to change how Missouri does redistricting. The Senate has put forward a proposal to send to the voters to give the voters a second look at it. It's moved over to the House. What happens with that in the House? I know you guys had some changes you wanted to make. The Senate version probably didn't include those changes. Do you just take the Senate bill and move forward, or what's the next step?
Well, be quite honest, I haven't seen the Senate bill yet to take a look at it, and but it's a touchy issue. You know, I hear from constituents back home, don't overturn the vote of the citizens, and then I hear from ones that say, hey, let's change this and let's bring it back to the way it should be, and not have one person in charge of determining the demographer and those type of things. So
it's going to be a fun debate either way, right?
Yeah, it's going to be a debate either way, and I don't think people in the city want me to be their representative.
Oh, they might like that.
Oh,
But with a minute left, who won the week?
I believe the governor won the week by coming out and supporting their eminent domain language from senator and representative. I think that's good for Missourians, good for rural areas. And
Very early endorsement by Farm Bureau of the governor. So, who won the week?
It wasn't Bloomberg telling you how to farm.
Now that's going to be hard to top, Mr. Hart, but who won the week?
I think it's Holly Rader with the opioid legislation was passed this last Monday.
Who won the week? I'm going to step in. I was going to say Holly Rader as well. She did have a great week. It's, you know, it's just like urban folks don't always think about rural broadband. I think sometimes rural folks don't think of things like AIDS and opioid the way that hits rural Missouri. But it is, I think she's done some very good work there raising attention. Who are you going to say?
I agree with that.
We're going to do 3 for Holly Rader. We want to thank everybody here at the Farm Bureau for having us. We will be back in the studio next week on This Week in Missouri Politics. Thank you guys very much.
This Week in Missouri Politics, sponsored by the Missouri Association of Career Fire Protection Districts, Spire, and Sterling Bank.